Hello everyone and welcome back to another instalment of the Warwick F1 Show. Today we are talking the 2024 Italian Grand Prix in Monza, where something we learned this season, I think, is that Leclerc chooses some really convenient times to have his race wins. The Monegasque driver obviously won his home race for the first time in Monaco a bit earlier this season, and now he's won the home race of his team, Ferrari, obviously, with a huge win over the McLarens, a win I don't think anyone was really expecting. A strategy gamble from Ferrari, going with the unlikely one stop over the favourable two stop that the other teams seemed to favour in their planning, meant that they could beat the charging Oscar Piastri by just 2.6 seconds when it came to the final result. Meanwhile, we had another poor result from Red Bull, continuing of their poor race pace from Zandvoort. The only result that team could manage this race was a P6 for Verstappen and a P8 for Perez, really just on pure pace, not really getting unlucky in the race whatsoever, something that they are really going to want to turn around in the coming races as the McLarens continue to close down that gap in the Constructors' Championship. And also we got the first look at the pace and the driving of Franco Colapinto, the former F2 driver, who has recently been promoted to Williams Racing since Logan Sargent was dropped with immediate effect. We shall be talking about all of this and more on today's episode. I'm your host, Callum, and I am joined once again by Katch. And we'll start off, I think, just talking about our general rating as we usually do. And I think we were talking about this before. I quite enjoyed that race. It was a brilliant strategy battle, one which we haven't really seen much of this season. And yeah, what would you give it out of 10, Katch?
I think it was a great race. It had a lot of excitement. The middle bit was slightly dull, as we saw the strategy starting to play out. But the start at the end, there was a lot of drama, a lot of battles. Just the tension of who is going to get that win, which strategy is going to be the correct one. So honestly, I'd give it I'd say an 8. Might be high, but I really enjoyed it. It had me on the edge of my seat most of the time.
I was tempted with an 8 as well. I think maybe I'd go around a 7 or something. I think it seemed like you said, maybe just that middle bit was the reason to bump it down to a 7. But as we said, it is a brilliant strategy battle, one which and a lot of talking points from the race, which we'll get onto. We've got a huge list to go through with the McLarens and a lot of the other teams. But I think first off, it's obviously worth talking about the Ferraris, which, as we mentioned, no one really expected that. I was not even looking at the Ferraris until about lap 40 or so, and it just sort of, I wasn't really watching them, and then all of a sudden on lap 40, I think everyone just went, oh, hang on a minute, Ferraris might actually win this race. And we didn't expect it. Obviously, we knew that they had upgrades being brought into this race. And I think maybe they were optimistic that they could maybe challenge the McLarens, but let alone beat them on their home turf. And I thought it was a really brilliant performance. Obviously, they gambled with the strategy. Some strategy calls which I didn't think that Ferrari strategists were actually capable of, personally. But I think it was a good gamble for them to make. And yeah, what were your thoughts on it? I thought it was a brilliant bit of strategy from Ferrari, and a gamble that they had to make if they were going to have any chance at beating the McLarens.
Exactly, it was super impressive. Before the race, everyone was talking about the one stop. I think all the drivers, all the teams were like, yeah, we're going to do this one stop. And then as soon as the race started, we got about 10 laps in, and we'll exclude the back markers, but from the top 4 teams, everyone was on the mediums apart from Red Bull, and their hard tyres were going off at the same rate that the medium tyres were going off. So at that point, I think the teams realised that the degradation was bad, and they couldn't do the rest of the race on a hard tyre, because the Red Bulls had to pit at a similar point. So for Ferrari to notice that, to see the other teams doing the one stop, sure, I think they went on to this strategy. For Carlos's side, maybe deliberately. From Leclerc's side, a bit of a mistake, because Leclerc pitted very soon after Lando pitted and undercut him. But I think it was super impressive to see that they managed their tyres enough, because the other teams that were going for the two-stop and committed to it, they were doing fast lap after fast lap. And of course it wore the tyres, and of course they needed to two-stop it. but for Leclerc and Sainz to manage the tyres enough and keep them alive for, God, like 30, 40 laps, it was really impressive.
I think that's the part for me that impressed me was the tyre management of the Ferraris. The conditions were obviously a lot different from what they were on the Friday practice, and so I think a lot of teams were taken aback by how much the tyres were degrading, as you mentioned. And I do want to say and give credit to Ferrari for this strategy call, but in a way, I do kind of think that they were almost backed into it in a way, because as you mentioned, they for some reason decided to pit Leclerc straight after, was it Lando Norris, leading to him getting an undercut, and you could hear the team radio message from Leclerc saying, why the hell did we pit? And it seems right, because we all knew how strong the undercut was, and they obviously didn't want to, when the McLarens pit again, they didn't want to just follow the McLarens like they did last time, because they couldn't, I don't think on pure race pace they would have been able to just beat the McLaren state if they did the same strategy. They were still in that position of having to do something different, and it's just, and we've seen it before between Red Bull and Mercedes, where you just have two teams going for different strategies, or there's that one team that feels like they have to do something different and they have to take that chance if they want to go for the race win. And it just so happened that this was one of those races where the alternative strategy did pay off.
Completely. And Ferrari's usually a team that has high tyre deg. We're used to historically Ferrari being bad on their tyres.
Well, we should mention that Piastri was getting on for 2 seconds out of Leclerc's lap time by the last lap. And I think if there was 55 laps instead of 53 laps at this Monza Grand Prix, then we could be talking about Piastri having a win, or even a McLaren 1-2 at this rate. Like, it was very close by the end. What made it a really good race in the end was that we had that, what we've seen so many times before, I think this season, where you have that incoming driver on the fresher tyres, and it's just needing the driver in front just to really bang out those lap times and maintain a consistent pace where they've got the much worse tyres. But for Ferrari, I think, and especially for Fred Vasseur, I think this is a very much needed race result for them. Obviously, I think from before the summer break, we were talking about this in Zandvoort as well, that was a very good result for them after Mercedes seemed to be overtaking them in terms of race pace, and they seem to be slipping behind in the Constructors' Championship, with Mercedes getting some really good results. Obviously, the win in Hungary, the win in Silverstone as well. And I think this is, as we mentioned, a much needed result for Ferrari. And now they're obviously back in the talk for the constructors after those upgrades.
Yes, and the upgrades have worked well. Like, it's really interesting.
It's suddenly it's kind of, I don't think I even really took much notice of Ferrari and the constructors before. Obviously, I knew that they were quite far ahead of Mercedes, and so I think after Zandvoort, we thought that it was fairly likely that Ferrari were going to be able to hold out on that P3, but they actually might be in contention for the constructors as well. They're only about 40 points behind in the constructors. I think it's just 39 points behind Red Bull.
Yeah, because Red Bull are up top, and then McLaren are about 10 points behind them.
8 points behind Red Bull. I'm looking at the constructors, and Ferrari are 39 points behind Red Bull,
which is something we just didn't expect. We've said this all season, but this season is something we didn't expect. After I'm not going to say domination of the first part, but Max doing Max things in the first part of the season, we all thought we were in for another Red Bull show. And then something clicked, and something happened in the mysterious world of F1, and it suddenly turned into a great season. And
I'm tempted to say that it's more because it's rather than a click. Obviously, it's been a click for McLaren and Ferrari, but I'd say it's also been a lack of a click for Red Bull.
Yes,
I'd say as well as that, and that's why we've kind of all of a sudden got this three-way battle. But I think Ferrari will be tremendously happy. Obviously, I think for me, I'm still yet to be convinced, because it is only one result. It is only one track. We're obviously going into Baku next time around, which is a very different nature of the circuit to Monza. Obviously, you've got the really long back straight, but then the rest of the circuit for that is these really tight, a lot of slow speed corners as well. And so we're going to have to wait and see how the new Ferrari upgrades handle that compared to the McLarens. But
I want to make one point on strategy as well.
Go on.
I was surprised while I was watching the race. I was surprised that Ferrari did the one stop on both cars.
Yes.
So doing one car, it was obvious when Carlos didn't pit straight away, like along with Leclerc. We all kind of knew he was going for the one stop, even if he didn't agree with it. He was going for the one stop. Ferrari were putting that on him. But for Leclerc to do it as well, for Ferrari not to split their cars, they obviously had confidence. And they knew that these upgrades were good. So they had the confidence to one-stop both cars, even if it didn't work out. So I was impressed with that.
Yes, I think maybe it's for Ferrari, it's just because they learned their lesson from Leclerc following in the pit stops with Norris, and they probably did realise that they just had absolutely no chance at doing anything with the McLarens or challenging the McLarens in any way on a two-stop. And to be honest, they probably thought that they may as well take the risk, because I don't think there was really any risk from them behind the McLarens or any drivers behind Norris and Piastri, because Hamilton was in fifth, and he was in a fairly idle fifth position really for the entire race. He finished 22 seconds behind Sainz, and then Verstappen finished 37 seconds behind him. So he was in a very odd fifth position, and I just think that Ferrari knew that they were pretty safe with keeping in the top four, whatever strategy they went on, because maybe they had confidence in their upgrades and in their race pace by that point, and so they just may as well have done that. And also in the end, actually, you could argue it did work out quite well as well, because Sainz was obviously used as a kind of buffer or a kind of line of defense to make sure that Leclerc got that win. And although Sainz didn't really hold him up for very long in terms of actually battling Piastri, he probably did slow down Piastri a bit in the dirty air as well, and would have had some contribution, definitely making it a lot I wouldn't say easier, because it obviously wasn't easy for Leclerc, but giving him a bit more of a buffer by the end of the race with Sainz being there. It's really weird. I keep saying this is a good strategy from Ferrari, and it's not being processed in my mind correctly. But
Ferrari did a good strategy.
I can't accept it really personally, but maybe
I don't want to say. Like, Ferrari did a good strategy, yes, and it was smart from them. I also think they had a strong chance of winning because of McLaren. I don't want to say it was partly like they had the confidence to do it, because sure, we're saying the McLaren was quick, but they had their own issues. We're going to come on to this at some point, but they had their own issues to deal with. And there was no threat of Red Bull. Red Bull being out the window would have helped everyone. Would have given everyone okay, who cares, we can do what we want, we don't have a charging Max Verstappen behind us.
And the upgrades did work as well very nicely. Probably better than they expected as well.
George didn't like turn one, ever. So that took him out of contention. And then it was just the McLarens, and turn 4 in lap 1 showed us that they were going to have some issues between themselves. So it gave Ferrari being like, okay, we have more of a chance, we can do what we want. And they tried that strategy, and I don't think even they realised it would work straight away. No one realised it would work straight away.
No, I think, and yes, I think I think I should give Ferrari the benefit of the doubt. I've been very mean to Ferrari in the past year, but I do think they were kind of backed into that strategy, because I mean, the impressive thing, I think, from Ferrari is the fact they were able to manage their tyres, and also they realised that they had to do something different. And obviously the minds of Ferrari got together and like, right, so we can't do a two-stop strategy. What is a different number other than 2? And they chose 1. And luckily they didn't choose the 3-stop, but that would have definitely hindered their chances. Luckily they rolled their dice on the pit wall, and it came up 1. But yeah, we should definitely give credit to Ferrari, and I'm very interested to see how they can alter up the kind of mainstream view we've had for a while, which is McLaren have got this constructors in the bag, and how they can shake that up a little bit. But coming on to McLaren and what we were talking about, it's been a bit of a mixed bag and a lot of talking points and a very sour taste from that race, I think, for McLaren. Obviously,
are McLaren ever going to get 2 cars on the podium and it not be a sour taste?
This is the thing. They've had they can't have a good result just purely for the 2 drivers. It seems like it's got to have one doing well and sacrifice the other. But obviously Norris started on pole position and then seemed to be all fine. He actually didn't get overtaken in turn 1, so he's making progress, Lando Norris, from what we were saying before.
He didn't
get overtaken into turn 1. Instead it was turn 4, so he is making progress. Maybe next time round in Baku he might be able to go an entire lap before he gets overtaken.
If his teammate plays ball, but yes, but obviously an overtake into the turn 4 chicane by Piastri, some would say aggressive. We'll come on to that. But well, actually, we'll come on to that now, I think. So a lot of people... We may as well get this topic out the way.
How long have we got? We've got...
Okay.
We've half an hour minimum, I reckon this is going to take us to debate.
Great.
And I don't think we'll change our opinions. But yeah, so a lot of people said that was aggressive. And obviously, what followed was that compromised Norris's line, and that meant that Leclerc could also get through. And then all of a sudden, you've lost the 1-2, and you've split the drivers up, and Ferrari looking strong. And so, was Piastri inclined to do that? Do you think?
No. So, okay, I want to caveat this for people that don't know me who are listening to this podcast. I am a McLaren fan. I am a Lando Norris fan, first of all, but I am also a McLaren fan. So I love my team. I supported my team independently throughout 2023 when everyone else ditched us. So I will still back the team. However, Piastri made a mistake, in my opinion. I think it was overly aggressive.
Okay.
Yeah. So in that case, we were 1-2 going through. We made it through turn 1, first and second. That itself is like, okay, perfect. Just carry on this first lap. Hold position, drivers, and then battle it out all you want from lap 2 onwards. But I don't think Lando left the door too much open in turn 4. You will disagree. I don't think he did. Sure, he made sure that he didn't crash into anyone, but Oscar took that as an opportunity to dive around the outside of the first part of that chicane, causing Lando to have to brake and lose his rear end if he wasn't to crash in. Lando said in his own words, if he didn't brake, if he broke 1 meter later, both cars would have crashed and DNF'd. Which just shows that Oscar didn't really calculate it much. Like, it was a bit of a, okay, I can go take this win, perfect. And it caused Lando to slide and have to brake and lose the place to Leclerc. And at that point, there was no hope of a 1-2 because Lando would have been fuming, understandably. So I think it was a bit of a selfish move and a bit of a move in that circumstance, being like, oh, there might be an opportunity, let me go take it, instead of, okay, let's hold position and then take it the next time it comes around on lap 2. If he did that move on lap 2, 100% I would have been fine with it. But the fact we nearly crashed and nearly caused a double DNF wasn't good. It wasn't acceptable. And I don't care what papaya rules say it was allowed, it shouldn't have happened because we lost at 1-2 at that point.
But if you no longer go for a gap that is there, then you're no longer a racing driver.
Okay, Oscar, you're not a racing driver anymore. You're a team player. After Zandvoort, you're a team player.
It's interesting because obviously, do we know if McLaren had this talk with the 2 drivers beforehand with saying, like,
they can race before all the
they can race.
Said they can race.
Okay.
But was that a race or was that an overly aggressive move?
Maybe it was. I don't know. I think if Piastri, maybe it was a little bit uncalculated from him. I don't think. Maybe I don't think it was intended to be aggressive. Maybe he made a bit of a miscalculation in thinking that he could have overtook cleanly.
Yeah.
Without compromising Norris too much, and that obviously didn't work out as well as it had. But I don't like to blame Piastri too much because I don't think he's really done too much wrong. And Also, it feels
yeah.
wrong that he should have to hold position, judging how good he's been this season. He doesn't really feel like a second driver.
I don't
And
think he is, and I think that's a fair point, that he didn't really do anything wrong. It was interesting, I saw a video this morning that actually, was it last season at Monza the McLarens touched? So the McLarens are kind of attracted to each other at Monza. I don't know.
I don't know. I can't remember that personally.
Yeah, I think it was partway through the race, but yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't the first time. But
yeah, I don't think it is. But I think I don't. So this particular incident, I think I'm not going to blame Piastri, but I think it was like you've said, it wasn't a completely calculated move. Especially because Lando lost position to Leclerc and had to back off for the sake of both drivers. But then the whole race, I will blame McLaren and their lack of strategy and their lack of team orders. Yeah, that particular instance, it wasn't great. I was not a happy person. But I think...
No, I know that. I saw the chat.
yeah, really?
You were very angry. But
I was angry.
No, I think, yeah, I get what you mean. I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to blame Piastri too much. And I do think that it's unfair of him to say that you should try and hold position, especially because there's been many instances this time. And I think this race, most of this race was part of that, where Piastri was quicker than Norris. And so if he's to hold position, then he's also being compromised. Piastri is also being compromised because you've got a charging Leclerc behind you as well. And so maybe allowing them to battle. And he clearly thought he had the pace to overtake, in a sense. And if you have the pace to overtake, then you certainly have better pace, better pace overall, and you're better out in front. Maybe because it was turn 4, and you should have but then maybe that's something for McLaren to consider. You just say, right, make sure you hold position for, if you're both in the same positions and you get out of turn 1 clean, you hold position for just a couple of laps, then you go racing. Maybe that's the mistake that was made, is because it was so early on the race. Because obviously it being in turn 4, the pack was still very close together. And so with Norris being compromised just a little bit coming out of that corner, Leclerc was able to pass him easily. And also he was even, being challenged by, Sainz at that point as well. So maybe that's the mistake that was made by the team, was that it happened so early. But in that sense, I think it's more down to McLaren not being explicit enough with their drivers. I think if they just went into that race saying that both drivers could race each other, then Piastri is very much entitled to go for that move, I'd say. Again, a little bit of a miscalculation from him, perhaps, but still able to go for that move nonetheless. But it kind of brings us... Yeah, go on.
Can I just say, I want to add on that I do, as much as you can tell the frustration in my voice from this incident, I do...
It's fine, go on.
I do want to blame McLaren on this. I still love my team, but they were not explicit enough. Like I mentioned in all the pre-race stuff, they were told they could race. And they raced, and fair enough. And Piastri had good pace. We don't know, because Piastri was in clean air for a lot of that race. So maybe Norris's pace would have been that. Maybe the little slide at the start compromised. I don't know. We don't know. Only the internal McLaren team will know this. We're only speculating.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether we'll talk about strategy again, but McLaren need to be clearer now. I have a very, very strong opinion on this, that at this point, going into Baku, they need to decide. It's either one championship or both. They cannot dilly-dally. They cannot flip-flop on what they want. If they go for both championships, then Piastri is number 2 for the rest of the season. If they go... Because you don't know when you're going to get this opportunity again. For all we know, these upgrades could have been the start of something incredible, and Ferrari will be a whole second ahead of the field next year. We don't know. So this could be the only opportunity in the next few years for Lando to get a chance at this championship. Or, if you want to assume that that's not a possibility and 60 whatever points is too big of a gap, that's fine. Tell them that. Be clear to the media, be clear to everyone that you are not doing this, you are only focusing on constructors, and then that's fine. But at this point, we don't know what their thoughts are. They don't know what championship they want to go for. And if they get neither of them, it's a catastrophic failure. They have to get one of these championships at this point.
Oh yeah, I completely agree.
We cannot be after Abu Dhabi with them having lost both championships. That is unacceptable. So they need to decide in these next 2 weeks what is possible and what they're going to do and make that clear. Because you've got Will Buxton telling them that they need to sort this out. And when Will Buxton tells them that, oh, you know something's wrong.
Will Buxton, who has zero authority whatsoever to tell racing drivers and teams what to do.
We even had Nico Rosberg having a go at Zach Brown post-race interview. He had a fat go at Zach Brown. You had Lewis Hamilton in the media pen for half of his interview saying how McLaren cocked up their strategy. Everyone just wants a decision, let alone the drivers want a decision.
I think it just comes down to the point again where McLaren just aren't used to. I think a lot of McLaren, there's just a lot of inexperience of winning and how you win a world championship in a way. We were saying this before with Norris as well, with some of the mistakes that he was making, with and how we thought that he wasn't yet quite ready to win a world championship. We're obviously referring to the drivers' championship,
yes.
But now it looks that McLaren are showing signs of that as well. And you're right, they do need to make their minds up. Maybe it is too late. I don't know. Obviously, they did say that they were going to start considering team orders. I don't know. I'm very much on the fence about this, as I understand it's not very good to be, but I am. And I think it's because of my love of Piastri, because it feels wrong to, I think at this point, to name Piastri as a second driver, because he's done so well this season and he's been so up there, maybe sometimes even beyond Norris in some races. Certainly, I thought Spa he was a lot better than Norris and some other races before the summer break as well. He's been right up there, and but by extension as well, Norris has made some vital mistakes in this season, and he hasn't really dominated and convinced everyone that he should be that first driver that much. I mean, obviously he was always going to be the first driver, but he hasn't done first driver things. He hasn't completely dominated every single race over Piastri. And I don't know. It's just, I think now you have to. I think now you have to implement team orders, I want to say, because it seems that every time they let the McLaren drivers race, one of the drivers is compromised as a result. They don't know how to race cleanly and fairly and in a way that they can get both drivers a good result. Because I think we said this before, we said this earlier, it doesn't seem like the McLarens can ever get both drivers a satisfying result. It always seems that one driver is happy and one driver has had a bad day. And especially if you want to win the Constructors' Championship, especially now that Ferrari are looking so good and they're so convinced of their own ability in their car after those upgrades, it just seems that they need to maybe step in a little bit more.
They do, and I think they haven't fought. McLaren as a team haven't fought for a championship since Lewis, and a lot of team personnel has changed now, and that's understandable that you're not going to be ready for it. But are you ever going to be fully ready? You're a Formula One team. You need to get your act together and you need to fight for a championship. Even if it goes wrong, you can say you've given it a good shout. And I do agree that it feels unfair calling Piastri a number 2, and it's only for the rest of the season. He doesn't even have to be a number 2. He just has to support Lando and not compromise his races, which he's only done once or twice, so that's fair enough. But it's only for the rest of this season. And then if he can help Lando get the championship, like Will Joseph famously said to him on the radio in Hungary, you're going to need Oscar if you want to win a championship. Oscar needs to be there to help him win a championship.
That is a good point. If
he wins the championship, if Lando wins the drivers this season, it's back to square zero for next year. If Oscar's the better driver next year, it's obvious that they can be teammates and they can help each other because they both have a contract till 26. So they're both going to be there. But if Oscar and if McLaren as a whole is going to compromise the drivers and they're going to ditch the drivers. I don't see it unreasonable Lando losing his rank next year. I don't see it unreasonably that Lando might want to ditch. I don't know. This is all speculation, but they have to be serious. Like, this is so unserious right now. They really have to try. And if in Baku we see no more evidence of team orders, if we see no more evidence of fight, then I don't know. I can see. I don't know what would happen. I'm worried.
I think as well, we're also in quite a bit of an odd season, because normally when teams start off the season, they pretty clearly know by race 2 or 3 whether they're going to be in contention for some sort of championship. But that hasn't happened this season. We all thought at the start of the season, right, it's going to be another Verstappen's going to walk this season again. Not that we might only get Verstappen as a winner. We probably thought maybe we might have a chance of getting a couple of other race winners, but I don't think anyone thought around race 2, 3, or 4 that McLaren were going to be in serious contention for both championships, and now Ferrari as well. And so it's only really been since the summer break that we've been having this conversation of whether McLaren need to implement team orders for both these constructors championships. And by now, it almost seems a little bit too late in a way. It seems late now, and it seems unfair to now do this on Piastri. I think if you told him at the start of the season, before they'd had a lot of chance to get some results in and just properly display their performances, then it would be fine for Piastri saying at the start of the season, being clear to them, right, Norris is the number 1 driver, Piastri, you're the second driver. But after they've had so much of the season already where they're on level terms, I think to now do it is also part of the problem, where it seems quite a bit unfair on Piastri.
I'll say yes, but I'll give you a different timescale after the summer break. I think the first half, even going into the last 3 races the last 4 races where it was Mercedes that were doing really well just before the summer break, at that point McLaren had properly realised, right, we're in contention for a championship. And at that point, both drivers had been on equal footing. And in the end, as much as Piastri's done really well this season, for only his second season in F1, he was behind Lando in the drivers. And at that point, you come to summer break, and if you have, in a unique season like this is, like you've mentioned, you've got to choose one over the other. And they've had both the most equal opportunity throughout the whole of the first half of the season. So Piastri's had his chance. If he was ahead in the drivers, and if he was second, then of course they would prioritise Piastri. And questions would be said about Norris, but we're not at that circumstance. So come after the summer break, especially after Zandvoort and Lando got that win, it's just unreasonable to still be playing this stupid game of, who's number 1? We have 2 number 1 drivers. You don't. It's this second half of the season, you don't. It's less than 10 races. It's like 8 races now. Have a number 1 driver for 8 races and then go back to square zero. It's not hard.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should mention that Norris is 44 points ahead of Piastri in the Drivers' Championship. And as much as we want to rave about Piastri and how good he's been,
which he objectively,
we should absolutely give him credit, especially given the fact that it's been only his second season in Formula One. But Lando Norris has still been objectively better, and so he would obviously be the number 1 choice he would be the first driver if it came to that. But yeah, I think that we are in that position now where you just have to forget about, as much as I realize I'm contradicting myself here, because I said it would be unfair on Piastri, but McLaren obviously aren't going to be concerned with that. Their only concern has to be the drivers in the Constructors' Championship, especially, again, now that we know that Ferrari are going to be breathing down their neck. And so I think it is the right time. It's a little bit too late in a way for McLaren to implement team orders, and which is why they need to get on with it now. And so
they needed to get on with it yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. They have no more time to waste. Especially, and segueing onto my next point, especially how bad Red Bull were in that race. And we'll talk about Red Bull just for a little bit. What has happened to them
Oh God, I have no idea. Even Max Verstappen, there was a Dutch interview where he was like, "This went wrong, this went wrong, this went wrong." Oh wait, everything went wrong.
Yeah,
And
just proceeds to list the entire list of
literally
components on his car.
every single aspect, race strategy, pit stop, everything went wrong. So the fact that everything went wrong and he got sixth, fair enough, shows his caliber of a driver. But still, Red Bull was so good in that first part of the season, and especially coming from last year, usually you shouldn't have that dominant of a car the season prior, and then suddenly it falls off a cliff. Not saying that it fell off a cliff, but that other teams have caught
Not even
up.
the season before. From the first half of the season, the first few races this season, Verstappen was dominating as he usually was. And now we're at this point. I should mention as well that I didn't think Perez had too bad of a race considering where Verstappen was. Maybe that's just because Verstappen was so low down compared to how he usually was. But Perez was just in his sort of normal position. Not much really changed for Perez, but it just happened that Verstappen was lower down. So he's like, "Oh, this is a good performance."
Yeah, honestly, fair enough. Good for you, Perez. Like, you're not going anywhere at this point in time, so.
No, he's just chilling. Like he's got a guaranteed seat to the end of the season, so he's just cruising along, enjoying a few margaritas in his seat, and it's. Oh, you think he's more of a tequila man?
I think he's more of a tequila person. Doesn't he have a tequila brand?
Send in your thoughts to Warwick F1 Show. What cocktail or spirit do you think that Sergio Perez likes? No, I'd
share our favourite answers in the next episode.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's. I guess Perez can say it's a good race, but then I'm not sure. Like, people are going to like him celebrating, judging it's been probably the worst race for Red Bull in a very long time. Certainly this season, I would say. And we've gone to a point where before the summer break, you were talking about them. Obviously, it was kind of in McLaren's hands for the constructors, but you still thought that they were maybe going to be up there. And now in 2 races, you've gone to a point where they are predicted finishing pretty much third in the constructors and not even winning the drivers' championship with Verstappen. That is a low point. Yes, it is. They seriously need to turn things around. And
yeah, because they haven't won since Spain, I believe. Max won in Spain with 2 seconds and Lando was behind. And then from that point, they've been nowhere. Something's happened, which I cannot pin what it is. I don't completely understand it. Because Max has still put in really good performances, that's the thing. Max hasn't changed the way he drives. Okay, we'll say Austria, we'll put an asterisk by Austria, which was the race after Spain. He could have won that if he wasn't an asshole, but he didn't. And then from July, nothing's happened. They've been nowhere these last races. I don't understand.
It's been such a monumental drop off in their ability, their car. And I think McLaren and Ferrari upgrading their car and hasn't helped. It's kind of emphasized the problem.
Do you think it's that Red Bull have been starting their focus on 25 too early? And then with the team personnel leaving, Adrian Newey, now we know Jonathan Wheatley as well, maybe because they thought possibly that with the first 7 races, we've got the drivers and constructors, we're all right, we're good, let's focus on 25. And then suddenly they've taken their eye off the ball to focus on 25, and the other teams have caught up with them because they haven't focused on 25 as much.
Maybe. I mean, normally they're in the luxurious position of being about 200 points ahead by this point in the season, and so they don't even have to worry about it. But yeah, it's been so bad. Obviously, they need to have a huge turnaround now, and I don't even know. Maybe their car will perform better in the street circuits. Maybe Perez can muster up another street circuit wonder.
We're not on that, are we? Perez is not the king of the street circuits. There is no way.
Yeah, I think maybe he's a bit overrated in that sense.
When was the last time he won? When was the last time he won?
I think it was Baku, wasn't it?
It was not this year. It was not. Was it last year?
Yeah, Baku was last. Wait, no, Baku was not last year. I don't even know.
Exactly. So he is not the king of the street circuit.
No, okay, that's quite unlikely. I don't think Perez is going to win in Baku. I don't think we'll be predicting
anyone's
that.
going to win, it's not Perez.
He hasn't been in the top 5 in our predictions in at least a year.
Genuinely. But also, Singapore is not a good circuit for Red Bull. Last year it wasn't. So if last year it wasn't, I don't believe it will be this year.
No,
with the way this
I don't think so.
So that's one race that they're not going to be great at. If we can say that, do we think that maybe Baku they won't? They've historically done well, Baku, so I don't know. Maybe.
I'm not sure, but then
because it's Baku, so the order is Baku, then Singapore, and then a whole month. So we've only got 2 races before the mini summer break or the autumn break.
Yeah, Formula One has decided to have their break right on Fresh this week. So
yeah, it's
Formula
really
One, Saddam Hussein, if you're watching this, thank you very much for doing that. But
yeah,
yes,
really
but then
where are they? They're good. They're all right. Vegas, they could do well.
But then, if you see Red Bull now losing both championships, then I don't know. All of a sudden, personnel start turning their heads elsewhere, looking around. What else is there? Toto Wolff has come out saying that I think the communications between him and Verstappen are still open, and so
25 isn't an option, but he's still hoping for 26.
Maybe it's you never know, and someone like Verstappen, understandably, is going to get very impatient and he's going to want to be in a championship-winning car.
Oh, can we have a funsies session of? Do we think there's a possibility of a Lando and Max swap?
Lando and Max swap? I thought Verstappen would go to Mercedes.
But why? If McLaren are doing well, why would he go to Mercedes?
Yes, but then if you're going for 2026, you're going for the regulation changes, aren't you, of 2026 and the car changes, and so you're maybe looking for a team that has been stereotypically good. I suppose not in the last upgrades, but obviously going into the turbo hybrid era. Obviously, it was Mercedes that came out on top.
Red Bull ditch both Red Bull drivers leave, or Perez retires, and Max leaves Red Bull, so we get
Perez goes to Formula 2.
Perez goes to just Mars. Just we have a new driver lineup at Red Bull. I can see that in 26. If this is how the season's going, I can see that. Lando,
Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda incoming.
No, Yuki won't even get promoted if they have 5 seats. That's how much they hate Yuki.
Yeah, so, it's been quite unfair, but then they might be that desperate by that point. We don't know.
True. I could see a Liam Lawson and Lando Norris lineup.
How long have we been talking about Liam Lawson coming into F1? This is ridiculous.
Nope, I still want him there.
I think he's been fabled as this sort of driving god by this point, because everyone's just been silently talking about him, just like he needs to get an F1, like a profit in a way or something. I want to actually get it, like the scenes if he just comes into F1 and fails, like, and just diverts everyone's expectations. I don't think he will do that. I think he will do very well at
he'll do at least a good season.
At RB Visa Cash App, but
maybe that's better. Is this contract now expired? There was a date, I can't remember what September date it is, but there's a September date where this year, if he doesn't have a guaranteed, like they've said he's got a seat for 25, but if he doesn't have a contracted guaranteed seat, he's technically a free agent from Red Bull. I think I saw that there's some date in September. So let's say by mid-September, if he doesn't have a guaranteed seat for 25, like, sure, it might not be public to us, but if internally he doesn't have one, he could go to stake, for example.
Oh, that would be Liam Lawson and Nico Hülkenberg. I would love to see that.
Oh, please. Oh, I'd love that.
That would
but
be
I think there's so many new players. There's so many players now on the market, like Burletto from like F2. He's got to be in the shout now. If McLaren will release him, he's got to be in the shout. So,
but anyway, we've diverted very far off topic. But what we've basically covered is that Red Bull are fighting for their lives right now. We are seeing a monumental drop off in pace, and we've already seen personnel leaving. We've already seen internal affairs in the team, and things are seemingly going from bad to worse for them, and they could I think, quickly drop down the order, especially how close it is now between the McLarens, the Ferraris, the Mercedes. And so, yeah, it's not looking good. They're going to need a quick turnaround. I don't know when they have upgrades coming, but
if they have upgrades coming,
do we think
that if they did replace Perez over summer, do you think it would be any different?
No, I don't think so.
I agree. I think maybe. Do you think they knew they would be bad, so they kept Perez anyway? That could have been an option. I'd like
to think that teams won't predict that for themselves. But
True.
I think they kept Perez just purely because there wasn't anyone else that they thought could make a considerable difference to the amount of points that they were going to get in the constructors. I mean, Ricciardo is nowhere near ready. Tsunoda, I still think, is a little bit too inexperienced, or maybe would be rushed a bit too much into that Red Bull seat. I still wanted to see a bit more from Tsunoda before, if he was going to be in contention for the second Red Bull seat. And I don't think Sainz was interested either well, obviously he wouldn't be available until the end of the season. But I just think it was a lack of available alternatives, and they would rather commit to Perez than make any changes that could make them worse. I mean,
yeah, that's a good point.
Excuse me. We know how difficult it is to come into that Red Bull seat for drivers like Gasly or Albon, who are a bit inexperienced, and I just think that Perez was the best option.
I think so. But then for next season as well, let's say the Red Bull gained 0 points, which would be awful. But let's say they do that. There's a 160-point difference between the drivers. So even if they finish third, I think this conversation still has to be the same as if they finish first, like in the constructors this is. It's an unacceptable difference. Especially if they finish third, it's an unacceptable difference.
I think if anything, it's worse because they're doing so badly, because you need a driver that's going to scrape every available point. It's not like they're in a luxurious position like they were last season, where they had points to go around. Like, it was, they're almost scraping the bottom of the barrel now in terms of points, and so you need a driver like Verstappen who's going to get every single ounce of pace out of that car. And that's why Sergio Perez has been down so far this season, because the Red Bull car hasn't been as dominant, and so it's showing that huge gulf in performance between Verstappen and Perez. So I think, if anything, because of how bad the season's been, that it'll be more on the case of replacing Perez, in a way. But yes, they will certainly be drawing up plans to, I think, replace him in the winter. But we've talked quite well about. So obviously we've talked extensively about Ferrari, McLaren, and Red Bull. Mercedes was just, I don't think it had a great race. Hamilton, again, he was just sort of there, and I think he just drove a good race of his own. Didn't do anything monumental, but he gave a very good, solid performance and got a good 5th place for the team. I think that's probably all they could hope for today. I don't think their car was very good, had a very good race pace compared to the Ferraris or the McLarens. I mean, clearly from the result at the end, and also, and then Russell, I think underperformed quite a bit. He obviously had that mistake going into turn 1, and
that wasn't the only time as well. That first lap, obviously, he messed up turn 1. But he did it multiple times throughout the race, especially when he was either fighting to overtake or when he was under pressure from a car behind. So I don't know, maybe this just isn't a track for George, and it was a one-off performance, I think. That it was just under par of what we expect from George.
I hope it's a one-off, because I do like Russell, and obviously he's going into next season. He knows now what he obviously knew before, but he's going in as the main driver, and so he needs to be able to set an example in a way. But yeah, certainly a race that I think Russell's going to want to forget pretty quickly. And but
it was a positive sign that Mercedes started third. Was it 3rd and 5th they qualified? But I think
it was. It was 3rd and 6th. Yes,
3rd and 6th. But still, it was so close. Like, I think from 2nd through till Yes, second through till sixth. Yeah, Piastri through to Hamilton was within 1/10.
Oh
Piastri
yeah,
got a
yeah.
Piastri got a 19.436, and Hamilton got a 19.513. So
Oh
that's how
yeah.
close it was.
The,
Like, I
the
just
the
can't.
difference in pace in qualifying was absolutely ridiculous. I
Yeah,
think so tight,
it was
and
crazy. And then there was a 5/10 gap between Hamilton and Verstappen. But
yeah, it
yes,
was not. I mean, they surely must have known by the Saturday that Red Bull were not in for a very happy afternoon,
no.
or
But
very
but
very
for
happy Sunday.
No, but for Mercedes, I think they did, with Georgia's mistake at the start of the race. I think they did what they could. They could see that Ferrari's upgrades were good and that were performing well, and especially with Mercedes doing the same strategy as McLaren, there was no way they were going to overtake McLaren because they just didn't have the pace in comparison. And I think their best hope was assuming that the Ferrari one-stop strategy would fail, and it didn't. So it kind of just worked out the way it did.
I think a fifth from Hamilton is the best that they could muster up realistically without anything going wrong up front.
Yeah.
For Mercedes, and just purely on race pace, I think. They'll be maybe a little bit disappointed. I think that's just realistically where they were. Obviously, they weren't expecting the Ferrari upgrades to be probably as powerful as they were. And so that's just all they could muster up for today. And then apart from that, just sorry, go on.
Wait, muster up for today after George Russell made his mistake.
Yes, Russell will certainly want to turn that around for next.
They would have planned to do more, I think, if George was able to hold third or even go down to fourth. If George finished that first lap with no damage in third or fourth, then it would have been a different story. But that's not how it happened.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then just some honourable mentions as well. Albon with a brilliant 9th place position. I think that's an incredible performance from him. And Magnussen getting a point as well. I thought the Hasses did quite well this race. Magnussen obviously getting a point, and I thought Hülkenberg was very unlucky. Obviously, he got a bit of contact. Was it in lap 1, or it was very early on in the race that he got a bit of damage? And
it was, because wasn't it Ricciardo? It was.
Yes, it was. I think it was
Tsunoda.
I think it was Tsunoda, in that,
Oh, was it? No, which way around was it? I know Ricciardo. No, it was Ricciardo hit Hülkenberg. Hülkenberg then wanted revenge and hit Tsunoda because he accidentally hit the wrong car, and then Tsunoda DNF'd.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's.
It was that way round.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a scrap between the Hasses and the RBs.
And an honourable mention going the wrong way is Kevin Magnussen. Congratulations, you've earned yourself a race ban.
It was a decent race from him. You got a point from the race, but yeah, I think it's quite funny that he has got a race ban. He's managed to put it off for a little while, but yes, he is not going to be racing in Baku. Which, yes. We've seen a lot of Magnussen chaos this race, and obviously why they have made the decision to drop him for next season. And also, I think an honourable mention does go to Franco Colapinto, finishing 12th. I think that's really good from him, despite not being a points finish. But judging it's his first race in F1,
he was only 20 seconds behind Alex.
That's a good margin. I think. I certainly don't think Sargent would have done any better in that situation.
No, I think Sargent would have. Okay,
a lot of people have been talking about whether Colapinto is even going to do better than Sargent, because obviously it's quite a quick decision to get Colapinto in for the last 9 or 10 races.
Okay, there's a difference. Like clouding on Logan Sargent when he was in F1, great. Clouding on Logan Sargent now he's out of F1 is probably going through a really rough time right now. I feel uncomfortable doing it, but in the same breath, he would have crashed in one of the free practice sessions earlier in the weekend, 100%.
If it makes you feel any better, I don't think Logan Sargent's going to be listening to the Warwick F1 show. But
you never know. You never know.
Logan Sargent, cover your ears if you're listening. I think we'll discuss that. We'll have a news episode coming out later this week where we'll probably discuss the whether it is the right decision to replace Sargent with Colapinto. But given that, I think Colapinto drove a very good race. But anyway, I think that's pretty. We've extensively done the race results. And I think now we'll just move on to reviewing our predictions, which was, well, I think the results certainly we weren't expecting. Now, Chime couldn't unfortunately be here today, and so we can read through his predictions first and have the luxury of judging his predictions while he isn't here to argue the other way. He also had, I think he had the first, did he have the first pick?
I wasn't here the previous
I think
episode.
I think I had the first pick because I went with Norris. But then Chime actually went with Verstappen, which was so far off. But then I don't think many of us predicted that Red Bull were going to be so far off the pace. He then went with Norris second, which was obviously incorrect. So Norris finished P3 in the end, yes. Yep. Then Leclerc. So he did actually put both Ferraris in the top 5, which I did not think to do. And then he went with Piastri, and then he went with Sainz. So I'm inclined to say that is 4 points from his top 5. For the 2 McLarens and the 2 Ferraris he did get, but just in the wrong order, I would say. Yeah. Then he said that the race winner doesn't get pole.
Correct.
And so that was correct. Obviously, Norris got pole and Leclerc got the win. He said a 1-2 finish for a constructor. We didn't get that in the end. Nope. And he said that all 4 engines are seen in the top 7, which that's not right at all. I think we got 3 engines in the top 7, the Mercedes, the Ferrari, and the Honda engine. But not any Alpines. So
Alpine was never going to make top 7.
Well, that's why it's 3-point prediction.
Yeah, true.
But so yeah, that ends up as 5 points for Chime in the end, which takes him up to 98. Katch, have you got your predictions there? Would you like to go through yours?
I do. So I'm kind of frustrated because I did a coin flip between which Ferrari would win, and I went with Sainz, and it was the wrong coin flip. So I predicted Sainz would get P1. I then predicted Piastri would get P2.
I think that just predicting a Ferrari to win was quite impressive because I don't think any of us really thought that. Yeah. So I think that's sad you don't get any points for it, but it's impressive. You get.
I went off of vibes. I thought, right, it's Monza. Let's just predict a Ferrari. Why not? And vibes. Why not? But Piastri P2, we got that.
Certainly did get that. That's impressive.
Yep. I then got Leclerc P3, so I was 2 Ferraris in the top 3, but not correct ones. Then Norris P4 and Verstappen P5 because you have to put Max somewhere. And in this case, it didn't work.
It didn't pay off at all, did it? It was, again, very odd that something that took all of us by surprise with how poor the pace was of the Red Bull. And then your 1, 2, and 3-point prediction?
I don't think we need to talk about them. They're really bad. Perez doesn't make Q3, and somehow he did. Go for it. Good.
What do you mean somehow? He's in a Red Bull at the end of the day.
Oh yeah, but Sergio Perez. I don't know.
I think Chime and I were discussing this, and I think you did go quite harsh on yourself on the 1, 2, and 3-point predictions. Obviously, you weren't there to discuss with them, so we could have changed it.
Yeah, I just decided, I was sat on a bus and I was like, well, I'm just going to YOLO these. Like, I'm really bad at the 1, 2, 3, so at some point I'll understand it more and, like, get more within it, but I just thought, may as well mess around a bit, so, yeah. Second one, I thought, so we saw the lap times be quicker, so sure, my 2 point was a new qualifying lap record set, and that could have happened. The times were going quicker and quicker and quicker, so that actually wasn't completely unreasonable. It just didn't happen. At all. And then 5 DNFs because I thought it would be a chaos race, and there was no safety car. That's what
I've done that so many times this season where I've just hoped for chaos and then you don't even get a yellow flag. And we haven't had a safety car since Canada. It's been really depressing.
What? It's been that long?
Genuinely, it's not been since Canada. Bernd Mailander is a part-timer at this point.
No, he's not. He crashed. He hasn't had that much practice. That's why he crashed.
That is, yes. No, that is, that's true. But yeah, that is I think I'd put that as a 5-point prediction really with how uncommon DNFs are at the moment. We certainly are needing a regulation change to try and just shake up the reliability of the cars in a way. And yeah, it's depressing not to have these chaotic incidents that we, I guess, associate with Formula One, but that is the case.
I guess the racing is good. The race was good even without a safety car, which is positive for the sport.
Yes, despite Russell, the scrap between the RBs and the Hasses, and then so I then picked second, so I went with Norris, thinking, which I didn't think it was an unreasonable prediction, judging how good the McLarens have been. Obviously, he only finished third in the end. I put Verstappen second. We won't talk about that. I did put Leclerc in my top 5. He was P3. Piastri P4, and then I did get Hamilton P5. So oddly, that was the one driver that I got right. And so that in the end was 6 points in my top 3, in my top 5, sorry.
How many was mine?
Sorry, say that again?
How many points was in my top 5?
I think you were 6 as well.
Yeah, because I got Piastri dead on.
Because you got Piastri right, and then the rest were just correct in the top 5. So you got 6 points in the end, which takes you up to 96, we should say. So just 2 points behind Chinmay. I got 6 points from my top 5, and then my predictions actually went pretty good, to be fair. My 1 point prediction was a driver straight lines the chicane. Russell had that covered within about 20 seconds of the lights going out. My 2 point prediction was a Ferrari driver speaks Italian to the Tifosi in the post-race interview. In brackets, the driver has to be in the top 2. Chinmay did say that.
Good.
It wasn't the top 3, but we changed it to the top 2 because it was a 2 point prediction. And well, Leclerc had a butt ton of Italian to say to the Tifosi. I think he definitely claimed that one. Sure. You weren't here, so you couldn't question it.
Well, okay, I'm glad Chinmay put that caveat on it.
Yes, yeah. And then, yeah, it was a bit lenient, I suppose, if it was just the top 3. And then my 3 point prediction was the driver does a 4 stop, and that didn't happen. I think the most... Did we get any 3 stops?
I don't know. Maybe one of the cars that had to change their wing?
Yeah, maybe right at the back. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I think definitely not a 4 stop. So that puts me... That's 9 points for me, actually. And that puts me on... Oh, I'm the first to break 100. That's 101.
Oh, way.
I can already tell your enthusiasm. It's still very close. It's 101.
It is. It's very close.
Chinmay on 98, and then you're on 96. So it's still all to play for, certainly, when we go to next time out in Baku. We've done very extensively for our Monza review. Do you think, is there anything that we've missed, Katch?
I don't think so. Anything we've missed deliberately is coming up in the news episode.
It is, yes. We shall have a news episode coming out for you later in the week or sometime early next week to discuss all the driver changes such as that going on at Williams and also at Mercedes, with Kimi Antonelli being confirmed for next season as Russell's replacement. And then along with that, we will have a Baku preview before that in a fortnight's time, looking at what we can expect from the cars and this now 3-way battle for the Constructors' Championship. But until then, thank you very much, Katch, for joining me. I've been your host, Callum, and until next time, goodbye.